My spiritual practice needs to be taken at your own pace, and deconstructing and separating these false elements out and making contact with those truer levels of your being, those more transparent levels, closer to the truth, has to be done at your own pacing. But I suggest you do it. You meditate, you try this out. But it becomes less and less conventional. So you become less and less human, actually experientially less and less human, without suppressing anything, without avoiding anything, without denying anything, without not being willing to acknowledge anything. Nevertheless, your knowledge of yourself, your direct experience of isness, of life, of existence, of being, of truth, becomes so refined, so subtle, that it's like two completely different worlds. Again, the separation element there, the apparent separation element. Because more and more your experience is that conventional reality doesn't really have any existence. All that's real is the state of awareness itself. And it has many states and flavors and changes and nuances and ways in which it can experience itself, and filters and subtleties and levels up to a certain point. The highest level has no levels. Ironically, it's the highest level, but it has no levels because it's the one in its most primordial, original, absolute, stateless state. And you can get there by separating yourself out in your spiritual inquiry, your meditation, your contemplation, from everything that you can perceive. What typically happens initially when we start to inquire and we realize that, oh, I'm not this perception, I'm also not this perception, I'm also not this thought, I am also not this emotion. I have the emotion, nothing wrong with it, but it's not what I am. It's just what appears. It's just part of the canvas of life. Again, totally allowed, totally accepted, nothing to push it. We don't have to push anything away for spiritual practice. Separating yourself has nothing to do with not experiencing certain things. So you can have a raging emotional state. You can have a raging trigger come up and still separate yourself from that trigger without denying the trigger. So actually, by separating yourself from the trigger, you can allow the trigger to be as it is. So it's also a more holistic path in most ways, even though it sounds to the service-minded people like a practice of separation, like a philosophy of separation. It's not. Look beyond the service of separation, both in politics and in spiritual practice, and your thoughts and your emotions and your perceptions. Anyway, when we separate ourselves, it's like we drop into a deeper space every time. So you're automatically, right now, you're assuming something is true. You're assuming yourself to be located at some level, at some state, as some form, as some level of the body, as some level of the subtle body, maybe causal body, the mind, whatever you want to call that. And so at a certain level, you are identified with a particular position or filter. If you can notice that, it's like the background assumption, like, oh, I'm right here, I'm sitting right here and I have these things to do today. That can be in the back of your mind. That can be a subconscious feeling of identification. Take a deep breath. Notice the subtle tension that's always available to you in the background because of identification, because of associating that pure space of consciousness that cannot be described in its subtlest levels, which transcends space and time and form and objects, people. Realize that consciousness exists almost as if on its own, free of form. Again, you can't undo reality, so it doesn't matter what you visualize or imagine here, as long as it's effective, and this is effective. So you separate that true self out from every other perception, meaning you recognize it as it is, and you allow everything that you're associated with to be not that, not that, not that. Let it drop out of the space, or you drop into a deeper space, however you want to sort of feel into this viscerally. And every time you go subtler, it's even beyond this. But I still have this edginess, this sensation over here of location or this or that. And you drop that too. Every time you drop something, that original essence, that original space-like, but beyond space, quality of knowingness, pure knowingness, awareness, subtle, nuanced, delicate, pristine awareness, blue sky-like awareness, begins to know itself more directly, more purely, without filters, less and less filters.